Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's PDN Live. I am your moderator, Shannon, and with me tonight is Rob Pincus. Tonight's topic is active shooter response, and this is addressing really what happened in Orlando and in recent news. So it'll be a very interesting topic tonight. We do have a lot of questions revolved around this. A lot of them are really similar questions. So I'll make sure that our guests and Rob go into great detail about the questions and their answers. And as usual, we have live questions available. So if you have a question or if something that Rob or the guest says sparks your interest, go ahead and type it in the box and we'll do our best to get around to it. And also a reminder, questions that we don't get around to will be addressed at the end of the show offline. And also, live questions, please ask that we keep it on topic with the active shooter response. So with that, welcome everybody, and welcome Rob. How's it going?
Good. I'm in a really nicely paneled motel, and there's a lot of traffic noise, and luckily my shirt matches the paneling. So I just got off the range. We had just finished up a CFS class here, and it started raining and lightning and thundering. It was amazing, and class finished up really well. I'm in Leadville, Colorado, one of my most favorite places on the planet, and I've been assured that this motel has the best Wi-Fi in town of the 4 motels available. So I'm blending in with the paneling, and hopefully it will not be interrupted in the broadcast tonight. That's what we get. I would gladly change shirts to one that didn't match the background, but currently my luggage is being used as the stand for the video, so
improvising at its finest. So how much longer do you have on the tour?
About a month. We still have about a month left, maybe a little bit over that. The 22nd. The 23rd of July is the last day of the classes up there with Mike Hughes and his crew at Next Level Training, the SIRT pistol guys. We're going to be up there in Washington. That'll be the last class of the tour on the 23rd. We have an instructor development class right before that. We have a class in Oregon right before that. We have a class in California and a class in Nevada and a class in Salt Lake City coming up after this week, which is here in Colorado. So I'll be doing 2 more class days here in Leadville. Then I go up to Eagle, a little ways down the road. Is here in central Colorado up in the mountains. Again, this area is one of my favorite places on earth. It's great to be back up here. This is the highest elevation range in North America, just around 10,000 feet. So we're having a good time here in Leadville, and had a great class today and expecting a great advanced class tomorrow, rifle work on Friday with our CMMG rifles.
Awesome. And if people want to find more information on these classes or find you online, where can they go?
The best place to go for the tour information, not just for my classes, but for all of the tour instructors. So we got 10 instructors this year. We had about 75, 80 classes by the time they all got counted up. They are still traveling all over the country too. So while I'm hitting the West and the Pacific Northwest, we've got a lot of guys still back on the East Coast, down south, and hitting Middle America. So if people want to go to personaldefensenetwork.com, click on the training tab or hover over the training tab, and you'll see something that comes up with training dates and locations. Hit that. Registration links are all right there. Obviously, all of our classes at icetraining.us as well.
Awesome. And then we should have a drop-in guest tonight. Do you want to give a little bit of information about our guest, Mike Gillette, and his credentials as well?
He's solving computer problems, so his credentials, if he shows up, are going to be also emergency IT. And if he doesn't show up, then we don't need to know until he comes and joins us next time. Actually, Mike Gillette, if you're familiar with Mike Gillette, he's a brilliant instructor, teacher, and coach. He really is. He's kind of evolved through a few different roles in life to become, from working with Homeland Security on active shooter response, in fact, working with a lot of other organizations in law enforcement, outside of law enforcement, on executive protection and security kind of concepts as well as applications. And for PDN, he's become our consultant on strength development, both mind and body, as well as the people may be familiar with his work that we did on the DVD for grip strength development a few years ago. You know, grip strength is so important to any fighting, unarmed fighting, and in armed fighting, holding on to the tools, obviously, as well. So developing grip strength is something that he's become kind of an expert at. He bends like metal bars and rolls pans, and he does that kind of strongman stuff, usually tied into some items about mindset and strength and coaching and kind of personal commitment to excellence and that kind of thing. So I think he's going to join us tonight. If he, I just got a text from him. If he solves those computer problems, he'll join us, then talk a little bit about mindset in regard to, you know, just being able to turn it on, not being paranoid, but being prepared to turn it on if you find yourself in one of these spree killing events. And I use the term spree killing, active shooter. Either way, if you're in an event where something's really traumatic and you haven't thought about switching things on really quick, that may be hard to do. So he's going to talk a little bit about that tonight if he joins us, and then we're going to do a whole separate blog video cast thing here at Google Hangout. We're going to do that on just his mindset development material at some point in the future. That might be July, it might be August, but that was what we originally were scheduled to do tonight. Obviously, with things the way they went down in Florida a week and a half ago now, almost 2 weeks ago, we thought it was important to devote this PDN live broadcast not just to the memories of the people who were killed there and the idea of how much of a tragedy that was, but really in terms of doing the most we can while people are talking about active shooters and spree killers and public space, gun-free zones, how do I defend myself. This is the time to talk about that. The whole country is talking about it, so PDN Live should be talking about it too. So that was why we did the last-minute switch, and that's why Mike's primary guest appearance will be later this summer.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting topic tonight because like I said earlier, a lot of people have written in with very similar questions, and I think a lot of our viewers and listeners put themselves in that situation of, oh my gosh, what would I do if I was in that club, or how could this have been prevented? How could this have been stopped? So it'll be really interesting to see your input tonight as well as Mike's. So are you ready to jump in?
Ready to go. Let's
all right. So
give a quick recap first,
yeah.
Just in case 5 years from now people are going to be watching this. This is about a week and a half after the Pulse Nightclub spree killing event, which seems now motivated. I saw today another piece on the news. There's so many potential motivations, and I think that's really important to realize is whether this was purely an act of religious extremism or an act of political terrorism, or an act of hate crime against homosexual people, or of the angst of someone who may have had homosexual tendencies and couldn't act on them because of his family and his religion and his fear, and he lashed out against the community that he wanted to be part of. Or now I've seen that perhaps he was actually, and I don't know, honestly, like this could have been an onion thing, but there is a potential that this guy was actually obsessed with the female performance artist who was killed in Orlando by another gunman just the week before. I saw this coming across Facebook while I was out on it was a news link. So this may actually be a thing where the final straw for him was that this woman he was obsessed with was killed, and that's what put him over the edge. So at the end of the day, this guy's had behavioral problems for a long time. Hey, Mike Gillette's here. This guy had behavioral problems for a long time. This guy's had a lot of violent problems, angst. He's been fired because of violent threats. He's been interested in becoming a cop. He's been interested in becoming a security guard. He finally becomes a security guard. He's into guns, and he had made a decision at some point to be prepared to hurt a lot of people, and he decided to act on that last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, at the Pulse Nightclub in Orlando, and he killed 49 people. He went into a homosexual nightclub and he started shooting people with a rifle or with a pistol. He had just purchased that rifle a short time before that, obviously purchased it legally, and went in and started shooting people, and then created a hostage standoff was created by the first responders, to where there was a long time where he was on the phone, he was talking to people, he was barricaded in an area where the police couldn't get to him or felt they couldn't make entry to get to him without endangering people more than they already were endangered. They tried to negotiate with him. They made the decision at some point after 2+ hours from the initial standoff, where it became a hostage negotiation instead of an active killing situation, and they finally decided to make entry. And when they made that entry, he was killed as well as the 49 other people that he killed. And the police didn't kill any of them. Obviously, he killed the 49, and then he died in that final gun battle, in that final confrontation. So people were talking about a lot of things. There's obviously a lot of politics around this, but to me, the most important thing we can talk about is how do you get ready? How do you prepare? What if you're caught in one of these things? And that's the lines along which we're going to be answering the questions. I see Mike Gillette down there in the little screen. I see him down there. He is obviously solved his IT problem. So Mike, why don't you get us started if you're ready and comfortable with that? I kind of told everybody we're going to talk a little bit about the mindset of preparation that is involved in just switching it on. Like if you find yourself in one of these events, how do you prepare now without feeling paranoid for flipping that switch and get into go mode immediately in the public space?
Okay. You raised a couple of aspects, and hopefully I'll remember to get to those. The issue that I think a lot of people are sort of concerned about, well-meaning people, is that there's this perception that a person can be too ready, that they become paranoid. And so let's start there, because that comes up frequently. The idea that, I've thought about home defense, I've thought about maybe getting a firearm, getting some training, but I don't want to become paranoid. And I think that there's this idea that if you're sort of standing on the outside of this topic and you aren't, amongst the regular listener to your program, Rob, that just opening the door somehow is going to have this weird negative transformative effect. And I have always found that it tends to be the opposite of that. A person is paranoid when they are unprepared. A person is paranoid when they are unfamiliar with the subject matter. When it's scary and mysterious, it's very easy to have a whole ocean of negative associations, unsuredness, that kind of thing. Once we can get people familiar with something, once we can sort of demystify the topic, then it can just become another topic. It's no different than learning how to operate a fire extinguisher, or it can be. We can get to that point where we understand fires are dangerous, fires can kill you, fires don't care, fires are unfair, and we can sort of wrap our heads around that. Obviously, interpersonal violence has a personal component to it, and we invest different amounts of significance upon that. But the idea that we become paranoid by preparing ourselves is something that seems to be so prevalent that I think we need to deal with that right up front, really, before we get into anything else. My experience has been, and this comes from training hundreds and thousands of high-risk professionals over the years, that the more familiar you become with the task and how to navigate the complexities of that task in a unpredictable setting, the less alarmed, the less potentially upsetting it is. The better trained we are, the smoother we can be. There's a reason why the most elite forces among us train so incessantly. It's not to get paranoid. It's to do the opposite of that. Preparation is what allows more rational thinking under duress. So that's my first premise for the evening, Rob.
So, if I may, can I ask a couple of questions? Like, we have people who wrote in on mindset during a scenario like this, and one of the questions that came across is, how do you push past the panic in a scenario like this in order to survive or to be able to act on it?
That's a great question, and I think the first step with that is, and it's a right question, it's a correct question, because obviously panic will be an abundant aspect of that, or it can be, and we want to negate that. So what is it that we can do prior to a circumstance like that? And that's imagine what a circumstance like that might be like. What might it feel like? Sound like, smell like, all of those things. And the more we can put ourselves hypothetically in those sorts of situations, then we have the means of sort of pre-familiarizing ourselves with. I'm a product of a certain era of police training, and one of the things that one of my grizzled training officers would do to me, middle of the night, he was very old school. He started law enforcement in the early 60s. He was a veteran of Vietnam, tough guy, seen a lot. And he would just drive up to a convenience store and then just drop a hypothetical situation on me. Okay, this just happened, Gillette. What are you going to do? And then I would start to sort of fumble through my response. He's like, faster, faster, people are dying, and he would just, try to amp things up. And we're just sitting in the squad car. And it was remarkably low tech, but through repetition, through sort of, talking through those types of problems, I at least had a sense of what I might do if X, Y, or Z would happen. And there's the problem-solving part of that, but then there's the other part of it that is equally important, which is just recognizing that this is going to be a stimulus-rich circumstance. There's going to be so much happening, so much to process, and you have to be able to understand that ahead of time and expect that so that you aren't overwhelmed. Does that work for a response?
Yes, that
Or at
does.
least that kind of get us into the discussion.
Yes. So we've got that element of pushing past that, the chaos and the panic in a heated situation. So how do you match that with maintaining motor skills? Can you speak to the reality of this and any insight on preparing for that?
All right. I'm going to draw an analogy that may sound a little odd, but I'm drawing on experience from just a few hours ago. And a few hours ago, I was on a college campus, and I was talking to members of an extremely successful wrestling team. And we were talking about something similar, contextually, different, but the same sort of processing going on, and that is, how do you retain access to your skills and your training under duress? Okay, their duress is obviously different than the context we're speaking of tonight, but the challenge and the solution to that challenge is really kind of the same. And what I do with athletes is not dissimilar from what I have done with emergency responders. And I use a very simple tool, and I call it a focus word. And what I'll do with athletes, say, and this works for everybody, but with athletes, it's easier to explain. I'll say, how is it that you want to feel when you compete? And they'll give me some sort of descriptive term. Maybe they'll give me several, or they'll give me a few sentences. And I'll say, okay, now take the attitude that seems to be the most resonant with you, the most powerful or empowering one, and see if you can just kind of squeeze that down into one word. And then we call that their focus. For an athlete, a focus word might be intensity, say. Now, that may not be a good focus word for an armed citizen, but just hang with me for a second. So anytime that athlete is preparing for competition and the nerves are starting to get to them, they're breathing a little bit shallow, heart rate's accelerating, intensity, intensity. And they'll just say it to themselves, or they'll close their eyes and they'll imagine that they're writing it in the sky, or they'll write it on their hand with a Sharpie and they'll just look at it and they'll just rub their hand, and they'll focus on that and how they want to feel, how they want to bring that attribute into their match. So what a good focus word for an armed citizen or someone just trying to escape a circumstance like this might be focus. Because what's happening, neurologically, we're just being bombarded with all types of information, scream, smoke, darkness, distractions aplenty. So if you can just tell yourself, and maybe even audibly, focus, just focus, stay in it, just talk to yourself. I've talked to myself while moving through a structure on a drug lab raid. Now, no one else could hear me, but I was doing it because I knew I needed to do it, because I'm trying to accomplish things, and there's always distractions. There's always things competing for your attention. Those things aren't always helpful. So it sounds really simple. Is he actually saying to talk to yourself or just think of a word over and over? Yes, because it can work. Now, if you're really sophisticated and well-trained, maybe you're beyond this, but for the average person, focusing on a word or a phrase or just an attitude that they want to have, how is it that you want to be, and something like focused might come up. Okay, stay focused. Stay focused. You're moving to the start. Stay focused. You're looking for someone. You've got to pull out of a setting. Stay focused. And just say that over and over. The one caveat I would add to that is keep your phrasing positive. Don't phrase things in the negative. There are certain words that are particularly toxic, and a real big one is the word don't. And that's just because of the way the mind works. The mind has a difficult time processing negative statements. So it's why everyone uses that example. Don't think about pink elephants, and instantly your mind is full of pink elephants. And the reason is that for you to not think about pink elephants, your mind has to create a representation of the thing it's not supposed to think about, and then it has to try and erase that thing or draw a circle and a line through it or whatever to make it go away. Meanwhile, the mind has already created that picture or that word. So it's like if you were a parent and you had a child taking gymnastics and they're on the balance beam and you're saying, don't fall, don't fall, guess what happens next? The kid falls because you are creating pictures of that event in their head. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you are moving through a dark, noisy, occupied structure, saying something like, don't trip, or don't do this, or don't do that, would be the wrong approach. A, too complicated a message. B, it's not phrased in the positive. It's not an affirmative statement or an affirmative task to accomplish it. That I don't want to be going too far afield, but keep it simple and keep it repetitive. Keep it and just keep it forward moving. Keep it something that keeps you doing whatever it is that you need to do.
That's a really awesome perspective, and for those of you that will be joining us in next month's PDN Live, Mike will be our guest, and we can dive totally into this. I'm really excited for that. So thank you for that little tidbit there. In the meantime, is there anywhere people can go to find you online until next month's show, or follow you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to MikeGillette.com, MikeGillette.com, that's a great place to connect with me. There's nothing there but free content and links to all of my social media channels. And it's lots of strong, affirmative encouragement on basically being awesome and cultivating a strong, powerful, focused mindset.
We're going to have a good show next month then. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike. It was great.
All right, Rob. Are we ready to dive into the questions for tonight?
Ready to go into the questions. So, this mindset piece, I bet we'll come back to that, and I'm looking forward to that show that we're going to do with Mike that's just about that in a much broader spectrum, but so much of what we're about to talk about can be predicated on those two pieces. Just because you're getting ready doesn't mean you're paranoid. And if you're worried about being able to flip that switch and turn on everything you're preparing to possibly do, give yourself that focus word. A lot of people in our community talk about thinking about that thing. What's the thing? What do you have passion for that you want to survive to do? Is it today's baby Pincus' first birthday. It officially turns 1 today. So we celebrated yesterday. We had friends, family. Our sister's in from Nashville. My mom's in from Jersey. Lots of our local friends were there, and we had just a great time, a big party. A 1-year-old doesn't really care about a birthday party, but for us as a family, it's a big milestone, and we wanted to thank a lot of the people that have been involved in that year and helping us, and it was a great time. And what I'm going to think about, if that happens tonight, that probably not in Leadville, but maybe, right? Small town, mountain town, 20 people in a restaurant, maybe it happens. Maybe it's a result of a domestic violence issue that turns into a spree killing. I'm caught up in the middle of it. I'm going to think about my daughter. I'm going to think about her second birthday. Your wife, your mom, your passion in life. You aren't close to your family. You don't have a big family. Maybe it's rock climbing. Maybe it's your dog. I don't care what it is. Just have that thing, and maybe that's tied to that word idea that Mike was talking about. So that's good stuff. And Mike's a brilliant guy. He's one of my mentors, one of my coaches personally, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with him and lots of future stuff here at PDN as well. Yeah.
All right. Explain the run, hide, and fight concept.
The run, hide, fight is now, that's kind of become the mantra that has replaced a lot of the lockdown, the kind of hide and hope theory that used to exist prior to the Sandy Hook event. And this is now like a government recommended and sponsored concept at a lot of levels, is this idea of run, hide, and fight. Now, inside of our school attacker response course and inside of our active shooter response courses at IC training, we refer to this as evade, barricade and respond if necessary. So the evade or the run, that just simply means you don't want to be where the bad guy is. If the bad guy is shooting up the restaurant and you can run into the kitchen, then get out. If the bad guy is shooting up the movie theater, the actual theater, and you can get outside or you can get out to the lobby, then get out. If you're in the food court in the mall and you can get out into a back hall, if you can go into the restroom, you can jump the counter and run out through the back of the Burger King, because you know they take deliveries and they've got all kinds of stuff that they've probably got a door that leads right out in the parking lot. But we don't normally think in a public space about how we would move other than the normal entrances and exits, right? And a well-planned spree killer might think about that. Somebody who's planned ahead a terrorist event, something like that, they might think, well, if we start shooting at the food court, this is the area out to the mall they're going to run, and if we put guys on this side and this side, then when they run out there, we can shoot at them. Or maybe they plan a bomb, a secondary explosive, out of the food court, the normal entrance. Well, if that bomb goes off and people start shooting, and I'm standing in line at the taco place, and I think ahead of time, I say, well, they've got to have a kitchen. They've got to have a rear exit. It may go into a hallway, or it may go right into the parking lot. They got to have easy access for trash at all those food court places where they want that food. They're not carting that through the mall. So if I jump the counter, not only does that give me an evasion point, potentially, but it also sets us up for the next thing, which is barricade. So if you can't get away from where the bad guy is, maybe you can hide. Maybe you can make it harder for the bad guy to get to you. You can block a door. You can hide behind something. Concealment, hiding, is barricading. If the bad guy can't find you, he can't hurt you. He can't get to you, right? So evade, get away if you can. Barricade, if you can't really leave the area entirely, make it harder for the bad guy to get to you. Get into the bathroom, go around 2 or 3 corners, go over that counter, hide. Maybe there's a giant refrigerator you can blockade from inside somehow, a big, metal box that's designed to insulate the food. Well, if you can get in there and hide for a little while, those things all have emergency exits. They're all built so that people can't get trapped inside them now, right? So maybe you can hide in there. Maybe you can hide under the counter, hide behind the oven, whatever it is, something that's going to probably stop bullets, something that you can conceal yourself behind. You barricade. Block the door. Now, this is where planning ahead for your workplace, or maybe just with what you carry around every day, you're going to be able to plan ahead and have a doorstop. Or you have a couple carabiners on a chain or on a rope. You've got something that you can use to secure a door, whether it opens outward or opens inward, that normally wouldn't lock, right? A lot of the doors in the public space, they don't lock. So the doors in the public space, they are focused on the idea that we want to make sure people can get away from fire, right? We want to be able to get away, not be trapped inside the building. Well, we might want to be able to block that door and keep the bad guy from getting to us. So that sometimes means carrying your own tools, right? You can't count on having a bunch of furniture to throw in front of a doorway or something, especially if it's an outward opening door. So having some of your own tools, or for the school teachers, planning ahead, a couple well-placed, just eyelets and some carabiners or some chain, and you can quickly latch that, and that outward opening door now is going to be harder to get through. That's where barricade plays in. So run, hide, fight. We say barricade. The hide idea is a barricade. It's making it harder for the bad guy to get to you and slowing down his ability to reach you, to hurt you. Those are the same thing. And then the fight is our response, right? Sometimes, it's actually, I've been impressed that people have just been really blunt about it in a lot of the government and school circles. They say fight. Yeah, fight. That's what we're talking about, right? We were maybe a little bit more politically correct and just said respond if necessary, and that response is fight. One of the things we get into inside of our community, the Personal Defense Network fan base, and a lot of people I deal with in classes, is sometimes we think fight means the tool, right? Well, I'm learning to fight with a gun, so I'm going to fight with a gun, and there's a lot of cliches and kind of dogma and rhetoric about needing a gun to stop a bad guy. Well, you don't. I mean, I saw a great video. I'm going to share it on my social media over the next day or two, maybe tomorrow morning. A great video that was just released recently of a situation that happened inside of a school setting where somebody shot a couple people, was reloading his shotgun, and another student came out, saw the guy, charged him, disarmed him, threw him down, pulled the gun away from him, and stopped the threat with clearly no tools whatsoever. Now, maybe the guy had some unarmed training. Maybe he was a grappler. Maybe he had thought about this stuff ahead of time. Or maybe he just improvised all that and got through it with mindset and willpower and some physical strength. I don't care. He had the readiness and mindset at least enough to respond. He realized that if he just stood there and hid in the corner and hoped the bad guy didn't shoot him, that he could die, or that other people could die. And he chose to take action. And the action he took, one unarmed guy, young man, maybe a kid, took action against an armed gunman who had already shot people while he was pausing to reload and took that gun away, that rifle or that shotgun in that case away. That's what we preach, is respond as you can. Improvise tools or tools you carry every day for personal defense. Sometimes you can't have those tools, and people are gun-free zones, don't go to them. Well, if you're going to get on a plane, you're going to go to a gun-free zone. I drove back from PDN headquarters to the Western HQ for me in Colorado. 20 hours later, I was on a plane flying to, 14 hours later, I was on a plane flying to Manhattan. Guess what? I didn't have the gun in the airport. I didn't have a gun on the plane. I didn't have a gun when I landed. I didn't have a gun for the rest of that weekend because 26 hours I was on the ground there. Went to a friend's wedding. Didn't have a gun when I went back to the airport. Didn't have a gun when I got back on the plane. Didn't have a gun when I landed at the airport, and wasn't reunited with my gun until shortly thereafter. But I didn't feel helpless by any stretch. And sometimes we do a disservice when we say fight or shoot or something like that, when what we really mean is do what you need to do and do what you can do. Don't rely on someone else to get there and do it for you. So respond is you. You be ready to fight. Maybe you're going to recruit a couple friends, or maybe you're going to do it all by yourself, but don't just hide in the corner and hope that some other good guy is going to help you. Don't hide in the corner and think you're helpless because you don't have a gun, because some guy on the internet said if you don't have a gun, you're helpless. It's not true. Some guy on the internet right now, a guy, by the way, who took the opportunity during Mike's speech there to change shirts, and now I don't blend in with the background. That would have been hiding. I would have been like camouflaging myself. So the idea is that I'm telling you, you can fight. You can win. You and 3 of your friends can win. 5 12-year-olds can win against the gunman if they have any idea what to do and the willpower and the empowerment to do it. They're told ahead of time, right now, you can fight. Do it. Don't wait for
this brings up a really interesting topic that a lot of people wrote in about, and it's mindset during active shooter scenario. It's one person in a large crowded area like a nightclub, a mall, a church, a school, what have you. Many people wrote in to question why people did not fight back, and why don't people realize that one shooter wouldn't stand a chance with 10 or 20 people rushing them.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, if I were going to, like organized religion telling people to, be calm in the face of evil and turn the other cheek and let people get their penalties later in life. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's government telling people, hey, you don't need to worry about fighting. The police will take care of you. You don't need to be armed. You don't need to take personal responsibility. We're here to help. We'll protect you. And you're only making things worse if you try to fight. Maybe it's schools telling kids to let other kids bully them. And again, like if a kid's punching you, cover your head and eventually he'll get tired, is advice I've heard in response to a physical attack in school settings, right? If you punch back, if you fight back, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be equally punished, if not more so punished, right? If you see a guy picking on a kid who's maybe disabled, maybe smaller, and he's picking on him, and you go over and insert yourself over there and say, hey, knock it off, and it gets physical, now you could be interpreted as the instigator in our school systems, right? So if we're telling kids never to fight back, that there's never an appropriate time to fight back, if we're telling them to hide and hope in response to an active shooter in their school, if we're telling adults the government will take care of you, that's the police's job, not your job. If we're telling people in all kinds of settings to be meek and to be, docile and to be the lambs and to be, someone who's going to be taken care of in the long run, that's not helping. So, that's why. That somewhere in there is why 100 people, 200 people didn't act. Now, maybe 1 or 2 of them did. Maybe 10 of them did. Maybe we're all going to be proven wrong. Everybody who thinks that we should be prepared to fight. Maybe what we're going to see is 49 people charging at that guy and him taking them out one by one by one. And the only people who survived were the people who ran and hid and wouldn't fight. But I doubt it. I really doubt it. So why? I don't know why any of those individuals didn't do it, and I can't be sure that there weren't 1 or 2 or 49 individuals that tried. But what I can be sure is that we need to change our mindset in this country. One, to a mindset of personal responsibility and accountability. We need to have a culture of value, a culture where we value ourselves enough and we value the people we care about enough to be ready to fight physically to defend that. And if we start that with kids in schools, with programs like the ALICE program or other active shooter response programs like School Attacker Response Course or any kind of run, hide, fight mentality, as long as we're telling them to fight, eventually some critical thinking 10-year-old is going to be like, wait a minute, why is it okay to fight against the guy with a rifle? Why are you telling me to do that? but I can't fight against the guy who's 2 inches taller than me on the playground. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I feel like a little more confident against the guy who's 2 inches taller than me than I do against the guy with a rifle. But you're saying that's okay, and maybe we should do this over here. And you start doing that, and all of a sudden that personal accountability, responsibility mantra just changes, and now people might be more inclined to fight.
So we're talking about fighting, but then we also talked about having that option of running out the back of a Burger King to get out of harm's way. So what is the best way to train for both fight response and a flight response to an active shooter situation or a threat in general?
When I hear the question, I wonder if somebody's talking about the natural reaction of...
Yeah, I think so.
So if they're talking about the natural reactions, the best way to obviously train to deal with those natural reactions is to integrate them into your training, to simulate startle reactions, to simulate situations where you are just backing away and stunned, and then you clip visualization. Oh, wait a minute, I have my gun. And then you move laterally, consciously when you reach for the gun. Maybe it's a situation where you just cover up and you're thinking about, okay, I'm blocking. Now I have the opportunity to throw an elbow strike. And you don't just always assume that you're in your magic ready position and you're throwing elbow strikes, because that may not be where you are. You may go into a freeze mode. You may go into a flight mode and try to run away. Or maybe you do just go right into your fight mode. But integrating all of those potential beginning reactions is important as precursors to your ultimate response. Of course, we do that in the CFS program. People have seen the video. Some people get it, some people don't get it. I just posted a great article today on the amygdala and the natural reactions we have to fear and startle and how fast they happen. Down to 100 milliseconds, according to the research that was related in this article that I posted on social media today. And that's huge. Like, you're not making a decision, a cognitive decision on, oh, I need to shoot that guy, and reaching for your gun in less than 1/10 of a second. But if your hands and eyes and you're lowering your center of gravity, your whole body's reacting in down as low as 1/10 of a second. When you read that, if you understand what you're reading and you don't think it's important to integrate some kind of startle reaction into some of your firearms training before reaching for the gun and presenting, I don't know how you think your training could possibly be realistic or contextual for true defensive shooting. So the way you integrate the natural reactions, that's a whole nother show, integrating natural reactions into your defensive training. But that's the key, is integrate those natural reactions into what you're doing. Don't assume that they're just going to go away, and don't assume also that they're going to dictate what you do forever in that moment, right? So in other words, just because you start off a little frozen, this is where you recover faster from being frozen if you've integrated a moment of being frozen into your training. If you never do it and you just kind of ego through, well, that won't happen to me because I'm going to train, but you don't train to overcome that, that's still going to happen potentially, and now you haven't trained to deal with it, so you get stuck in that loop, right? So you want to integrate it into your training.
Sounds like we've got a lot of questions for Mike next month on this whole mindset. So another question that we got a lot of people writing in about is responding to an active shooter situation and drawing your weapon. And just think, in the midst of all the chaos, how do you sort out the bad guys from other concealed carry citizens who may be executing their own plan? Is it defending, retreating, advancing, joining up? How do people know you're the good guy?
Yeah, they I think the way they know you're the good guy has a lot to do with how in control you look and what it looks like you're controlling yourself to do. First of all, get rid of any extended ready position. Any ready, quote-unquote, ready position that involves driving the gun out from your body and having it out in front, whether you're Jack Bowering around while you're searching, or you're out in a fully extended engaged shooting position, you're in an isosceles position, you're in an extended low ready position where your body's upright but the gun is kind of tilted down. If that gun is out from your body, I think most people see that, especially police officers coming around the corner, good guys looking for bad guys, they hear shots going off. If your gun's compressed against your body, especially if it's compressed, I'll adjust my angle here. If your gun's compressed against your body, and especially if it's one-handed compressed while you're just kind of shielding it in a crowd, making sure nobody bumps into it, this doesn't look like someone who's actively killing anyone, right? This, if I'm looking at you from 20 feet away and people are screaming and there's shots going off, this could very well be somebody who's actively killing someone. So keeping that gun in close, when you have a clear shot, when you see the bad guy, now I can quickly drive out and shoot. But this is what keeps you from getting shot by the responding police officer, much less likely. This is what keeps you from being mistaken as the bad guy. This gives you a chance to make eye contact with somebody and say, hey, I'm cool, like I'm not a threat to you. But if somebody fires a shot or screams and you do this, well, you're an immediate threat to them. And you know, if I don't care who the guy is, if I see this guy coming towards me and my family, I have to think threat. If I see this guy coming towards me and my family to engage with us, I don't think immediate threat. This gives me a microsecond. It gives me to interact with him and figure out what's going on. So get rid of the extended ready positions. Don't drive your gun out until you have a shooting solution on something you believe is a threat. We tell a lot of people, don't draw your gun. Keep your hand on your gun if you're fighting through the crowd. Let's say you're moving upstream. You've got family members over there, and you're over here ordering your food. I use the food court a lot, but it could be the mall. It could be you're in one store there and another one. It could be in a busy walking street area where you're doing shopping or food or a parking lot. Amusement park, whatever it is. If you're in a situation where you're carrying a gun in a public space and you get, whoa, something's happening over there and my family's over there, why draw your gun 100 yards away or 50 yards away with 400 people between you and the bad guy? Maybe just keep your gun in the holster and stage it, right? Put your hand, your good firing grip on the gun while it's still inside the holster, fight your way through the crowd, and then when you emerge in a situation, into a moment where you can shoot, if you need to shoot, that's when you're going to actually draw your gun and drive out and shoot. And if you've practiced driving the gun out from the ready position and shooting, if you've practiced pulling the gun out of your holster and driving out to a shooting position and engaging threats in your training, then that shouldn't be that big a deal. Because the risk and benefit factor, the idea that you're going to draw your gun and keep the gun in your hand and fight through the crowd, and you know, people all kinds of rationalizations about how they're going to do it. How would I do it? I'd keep the gun in close and shield and push. But I'd much rather keep it in the holster if I didn't have a shooting situation anyway. I see some guys like pull the gun out and they want to, in a crowd, put it up against the side of their head. Well, I think everyone running by you might think this is a bad tool instead of a good tool, and now the gun's pointed up and you're not fighting against the people to bring it down. It's just like, this is, I get it, you're not pointing a gun at anybody, but how many people are going to try to grab your gun? How many people might think you're the bad guy? Are you affecting your peripheral vision? Like, there's all kinds of things going on with the gun out here. Plus, now you look like you're in a 1970s cop show, right? Like, nobody wants to do that. So keep the gun in close, keep the gun in the holster. When you have the shooting solution, then you drive it out or then you present it.
What if you are in this situation, you notice someone else is taking action, another concealed carry person? Do you join in? Do you retreat? What's the solution there?
You know, so here's the deal. First of all, you got to remember everybody reacts and responds as an individual first, right? In our two-person armed defense class, we just ran 3 of them last week in Iowa. The two-person armed defense class, that's really one of the things we try to drive home to people. You know, one of my mentors back in the mid-90s, Hector Martinez, who was running PSD, the tactics package and gun package for the PSD school at Fort McClellan, he was telling me, you know, he was stressing to all the students, he was saying to everybody he trained, he was like, look, he had just gotten done with very high-profile detail during the first Gulf War. Now he was in a training role, and he said, you know, everybody react. He didn't say reacts and responds. We weren't talking about bodies' natural reactions and startle reactions then, but he would say is everybody responds as an individual first. So I don't care how highly trained you are, how good your team is, if somebody takes a shot at your principal that you're supposed to be protecting, everybody first goes, oh, and starts to think about, you know, maybe bringing their rifle up or in a low-profile situation, drawing their pistol and responding as an individual. But if you're on the far side of that attack and your principal's in front of you and the primary officer's in front of you, and then you've got other team members in front of you, between you and the bad guy, you are supposed to remember very quickly that, wait, my job is to look this way and maybe find a place to go and escort the principal and everybody else who's going with us to a safer place while the guys on the other side are supposed to deal with that threat. Well, that's in a highly trained environment, in a military, highly trained, armed professional environment where one of the best guys in the business at the time was saying, hey, wait a minute, you can be as cool as you want and tell yourself you're awesome, but just because you're on the range and you know the principal's here and you're here and the targets are over there, and you instantly, when the threat command is called, you turn away from the threats and you look for the place to go, doesn't mean you're going to do it. In the real world, you're going to look towards the gunfire and then remember your job. So remember that when you're standing there in the park and some guy starts shooting, you're at the concert, and you look over and you see another guy shooting him, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be inclined to respond as an individual. So get that into your training first. React as an individual, respond as an individual, and then start assessing what's going on. What's the right thing to do is probably going to depend on the situation, right? If you're even in a position to consider should you join in or not, chances are that threat's down because that guy's already solved the problem. If he's already in it that fast and he's shooting, right? Hopefully he's already, or he hasn't solved the problem. You see him shooting, but the bad guy's still engaged. So there's your decision, right? If that bad guy's down, he's got it. Turn around and start looking for other threats. If the bad guy's still up, he doesn't have it, she doesn't have it, draw, if you have a shooting solution, take that shooting solution. In our two-person armed defense class, we do talk a little bit about, at more advanced levels, when you really get kind of tuned up and tuned in, and you know what your other partner is capable of. And this isn't just husband and wives, your coworkers, friends, people carry guns together and act around in public space. Well, if you got one guy who's shooting this way, and you trust his skills, you know what his skill sets are, his or her, and you want to, you don't need to move to the left to see the bad guy. Let them deal with that. You can't see that bad guy, and you want to do more of a kind of get back to back, have, not overlapping fields of fire, but different fields of fire, different fields of responsibility. Now you multiply the capabilities of that team by not concentrating your guns and your attention on one person, but instead breaking away from one, let him handle that, and I'm going to assess. And that's a lot of discipline. It's hard, right? And if you're not on the SWAT team and in the military team, and you haven't trained and worked with the person that you're in that event with, if it's just some stranger, I think I would be hard pressed to turn myself away from the known threat that I might be able to affect just because some other guy who I don't know has pulled a gun out and may or may not be directly engaged, right? I'm more likely to maybe delegate, watch that door and maybe do what I need to do directly if I'm at all thinking about coordination than I am to let somebody else handle the shooting problem if I don't know their capabilities.
Yeah. That actually answered my next question. A lot of people are asking, if you're not in immediate danger, do you exit or do you fight? And it sounds like basically you need to make that decision of yourself of when to act, evade, or stop the threat.
Yeah. There's a moral, ethical issue there. I get it. The Rob Pincus is your personal defense coach, and you're coming to me for information. Then I need to tell you that if you don't have a really compelling reason to insert yourself into that, and I don't mean, freedom. What I mean is your family's over there, right? If your family is in danger but you're not, I can't imagine people that aren't going to get involved, right? But if your family's over here, right? We had this situation in Texas in that Walgreens parking lot. If your family's over here and there's some other person who's in danger over there, and you're going to abandon your family to go insert yourself into this fight, I think there's a lot of people that are going to question that, right? And on the other hand, if you're alone, there's nobody around that you need to protect, this is where there's a lot of difference between individuals, and this is where everybody's got to kind of make their own decision. And I don't think in something like a spree killing event where lots and lots of people are getting hurt or could be potentially hurt, it's very, very different than inserting yourself into a guy who's robbing a bank, and you're going to go over there and save the bank money that's insured, and who cares, right? That's very different from somebody who's actively killing kids in a school, and you were there to pick up your kid, and you legally have a gun in the car and maybe on your body, and your kid's inside the school, yeah, you're going in, right? On the other hand, if you were dropping off school supplies and you don't even have a kid at that school, and you pull up and you're going to secure your gun as you're supposed to before you go into the school, maybe that's how it works in that state, and as you're getting ready to secure your gun, you realize somebody's shooting up the school, you don't have anybody to protect there, but that's where you come to that decision. The right thing to do is evade, right? Rob Pincus, personal defense coach, you evade, but then again, you may not be the person that's going to evade. You may be the person compelled to go in there and defend those kids. And I think a lot of people would rightfully fall on both sides of that line, depending on their background and mindset and capabilities, quite honestly.
Okay, so if you're in a concert hall, family's fine, you're fine, threats over there, how do you evacuate when under attack, and how do you prevent bottlenecks at exits, and what is your best strategy for escape once you've made that decision to leave?
First thing is, the more exit options you have, the better. So start thinking outside the box on exits, right? You want to start thinking about, like I said, jumping over the counter at the fast food place, jumping, going to the back of the convenience store instead of out the front through the glass doors. Thinking about the restaurant, there's almost always going to be an exit through the kitchen. Even if it's an exit into a hallway or into the back end of the hotel or whatever, go through the kitchen instead of going through the door. So you can start to avoid choke points that way. Now, if you're in a theater with all the exit signs, it's people it's kind of like know where the closest exit is. They tell you to know where the closest exit is on the airplane all the time. Well, what we also tell people is count the seats, because it may fill with smoke quickly. It may get dark quickly if that plane has to put itself down hard. You need to get out fast. Then you want to, if it's aisle 37 but there's no lights and you don't know what I'm aisle, you're doing math, probably not a good idea. So 10, right? So you get up and you just count, counting the seat in front of you, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, turn left, go. Like, so same thing in a movie theater, right? The lights might go out, there might be smoke, there might be fire, I don't know. So if I know there's a side exit and I'm counting on seeing that light, no. How many rows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's over here on the wall somewhere. Push on the door, get out. Concert hall, same thing. So it's down the box about where the exits are and finding the exit. The other thing you then want to do is hug the walls. Don't get caught in the middle. You get caught in the middle, and anybody who's been to a big rock concert, or anybody who has any mosh pitting experience knows that you get caught in the middle of that crowd that's shifting and moving. You become helpless pretty fast if you don't have like 2 or 3 good able-bodied stand-up grappling friends that are going to like start controlling people and form a perimeter around the weakest members of your tribe right there. You've got a problem. So stay at the edges. You can brace against a wall in a way that gives you the room to breathe and gives you an extra leverage point to not get knocked down and trampled. But if you're in the middle of that crowd, you've got problems. So stick to the edges. Get up against the wall, get up against the railings, use those things for leverage and for control and to gain space. Remember, if you get crushed, you can't breathe. That's just as bad as getting trampled. You can get crushed upright as well. So, keeping those elbows out, keeping yourself lowered, closing those hips down, closing your waist, closing that hip joint down, lowered center of gravity, stay strong, stay wide, keep breathing, and stick close to the edges of that crowd. Don't get caught in the middle.
All right, unarmed during an active shooter scenario. Go.
Unarmed is a mindset, not a physical condition. I don't know if you just set me up for that, but that's important to remember. I don't know what unarmed is, right? I get that what most people mean is I don't have a gun, I don't have a knife, but that's not unarmed unless you just think the gun or knife is a magic talisman of awesome and it's going to protect you from everything. And it kind of makes...
I think the base, let me give you a little background on the base of this question, because it was also answered a lot in different forms one way or another, but basically active shooting in a non-permissive environment.
Okay, so without a gun, gun-free zone. And that's what I mean. So if you're the kind of person that thinks that you're sort of somehow helpless or quote-unquote unarmed conceptually when you don't have your gun, then you're also probably the kind of person that thinks the bad guy with the gun is going to instantly magically kill everyone, right? If your gun is magic, then the bad guy's gun must be magic, so you need good magic to balance out evil magic. And I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. It's not how things work, okay? Like, you can create your own inner magic. I'm like Care Bear stare, I don't know, something. You can do something, right? So whatever it is you can do it. Like, you're only unarmed and helpless if you think you're unarmed and helpless. So improvised tools. What are things that are in a public space in that gun-free zone, in the area where you can't carry any overt defensive tool? Let's go that far. Can't carry a gun, can't carry a pistol, can't carry pepper spray, taser. You can't carry any overt, commonly thought of defensive tools. I still might be able to carry a keychain. Might be able to carry a hooked wooden cane. I might be able to have a weighted, backpack or some kind of a sap, a bandana with throw my keys in a bandana and I've got some weight there, right? A roll of quarters, whatever that might be, a change purse. A lot of people over in Europe, in areas of the world where they have coins that are denomination and like almost worthless, like we do here in the U.S. People carry a lot of coins, heavy coins, bigger coins. So a leather coin purse that a lot of men carry, obviously also in European countries, because they're using coins all the time, that can be heavy and weighted and used as an impact device. So you can carry some things, a good solid metal pen with a good solid tube on it that you can use as an impact device or a piercing device. Outside of that, like all the common things you see all around you, right? You're in a restaurant, okay? Silverware, glassware, hot liquids, heavy bottles. You're in that bar, that nightclub. Talk about that nightclub, right? Heavy bottles, lots of that, right? Vodka bottles are around. We can smash them and get sharp edges. We can pick up glasses and get sharp edges. We can take, if you're in a nicer restaurant, you've got stemware, you've got good wine glasses, you can break the top off. Now you've got some piercing impact, on the stem. You've got the top of the bottle. Maybe you're going to throw that down on the ground and create a kind of a no man's land where the person's got to come through glass, and you're going to open up a soap container from under the sink and you're going to throw that. So now you've got a slippery area covered in glass where the bad guy is going to come around the corner to kill you, and maybe he's just going to slip a little bit, lose his footing. That's your opportunity to run in there with your improvised tools, your fire extinguishers, right? We have a great video of using fire extinguisher as an improvised defensive tool at personaldefensenetwork.com. Hit them with the dry chemical, that's going to disorient him. It might start choking him. It might get into his eyes, take away his vision. And then you come in and you hit him with a big, heavy metal fire extinguisher. You know, you have somebody else picks up a chair. Somebody else picks up a mop. Somebody else is going to pick up a bunch of books and put them under their shirt and create like a bulletproof barrier. Maybe everybody's going to do that. Kids with backpacks, put heavy, thick books in the backpack, put the backpack on backwards when that bad guy comes into your room. When you're charging at him, could somebody get hurt? Could somebody get shot? Sure, absolutely. But you're all going to get shot if you just hide in the corner and hope, and the good guys don't get there in time. So improvised defensive tools and or low-profile everyday items that you can put into use as defensive tools in that environment. Flashlight's a great one, right? Carry a flashlight around. Most people aren't going to have their flashlight taken away as long as they don't have like spikes sticking out of the front. Well, now you've got your flashlight, and your flashlight still has an edge, right? It still has an extension on the back that you can use to create impact or to smash, hit against the bone. You know, just any way you can multiply your force, any way you can recruit friends and just be, you know, unarmed, truly without a tool, quote unquote, unarmed physically, but you're able to just swarm with control, leverage. Put 4 people on a 1 gunman. If you can get control of that gun, point it in a safe direction, let him shoot all his ammo out. Is it going to be loud? Is it going to be scary? Sure. But you're fighting through that, right? You're controlling the gun. 2 other people grab his legs. Another guy starts stepping on his face a lot and his throat hard, right, with his boots. Now the gun is pointing in a safe direction. You've taken away his mobility, and somebody is literally stepping on his head. Woman stepping on his head with nice high heels, like that's going to affect his ability to hurt people pretty fast.
So I think we've got time for one last question. Again, this was another one that a lot of people wrote in on. How do you train to become more situationally aware, especially in a situation like Orlando? How do you train your loved ones to do the same as well?
You know, a lot gets talked about situational awareness. I think some people want that to be a security blanket like the pistol, right? But as I've said already today, like, you think about this stuff ahead of time. You think about what the things you're looking for are. What are you looking for? You walk in, you think about where the exits might be, which exits are closer to you, closest to you. You think about positioning yourself in a place that's smart and close to an exit, right? Maybe if there's a side exit in that movie theater, you position yourself right there. Your family's going to sit right next to that exit. Maybe you'd rather sit in the middle, but guess what? If you're on the edge and there's a door 10 feet from you across that aisle, unless the bad guy comes in that door, now any other potential entry point, you've got an immediate, quick, fast, boom, we're out. And we're in the parking lot, and we're hiding behind cars, and we're moving our cars, and we're on our phones calling 911. So you think about ahead of time, where you position yourself, where would you exit, what are the alternatives, what are the options. You have a plan for communication. You have rendezvous points. You're at the mall, you're going to split up, cool. But just, you know, something weird happens, place gets flooded, power goes out, snowstorm, whatever it is, active shooter situation, fire. If something happens while we're separated in the mall, we're all going to get out any way we can, evade, and when we get out, we're all going to rendezvous at that, you know, Applebee's out on the surface for the frontage road across the parking lot. We're all going to rendezvous. We park our car. Park your car out the edge of the parking lot. We're going to meet at our car because it's unlikely to get caught up in anything that happens near the mall. Now, I'd rather park close to the mall and go in, because when I go to the mall, I don't want to walk through the parking lot. It might be rainy. I don't walk 200 yards. Some people might think it's worth it if they know their family's going to split up to position that car in a place away from the door but near a central point as far as the perimeter of the mall so that they can get to it and all should be able to find it as long as they can get away. You know, it's like go to the big tree during the fire drill. Well, if the big tree's right next to the building, it's going to be on fire too. So pick a tree that's like 100 yards away and go to that tree. So pick, you know, have a rendezvous point. Then in the moment, the situational awareness becomes, I'm in a movie theater. I'm watching the movie. Anybody who thinks that they're going to be sitting in a movie theater and they're going to be like looking at the exits and scanning and assessing, just don't go to the movie theater. You obviously don't care enough about the movie, so stop it. Anybody who thinks they're going to be sitting at a restaurant with good friends and good food and not engaging in eye-to-eye contact and talking and having a good time and looking at the menu and enjoying the food, well, don't go to restaurants. If you're that worried about it, like, go stay home, like have a dinner party. You know, I make fun of people all the time, like, what are you ordering off the Braille menu and just kind of hoping you get the food in your mouth while your head's on a swivel? It doesn't make any sense to me. So should you know what's going on around you? Sure, to a certain extent. Should you know ahead of time what's going on in certain areas, what the likely crime or even terrorist threat might be in that area? Sure. Should you know where the exits are when you walk in? Yeah. Should you do a quick assessment of who's there? Maybe we don't want to be here. Maybe this isn't the restaurant for us. Maybe this isn't the store. Maybe this isn't the mall. Maybe this isn't the park we want to hang out at. Yes, absolutely. But once you've done that initial assessment, now you just want to look for things that are out of the ordinary. There's a great article, I think Grant Cunningham wrote it, about looking for things that are out of the ordinary, right? So you know what people are here right now, you know what cars are parked out here, you know what the normal behavior is in this environment. I can tone it down a little bit now. And hopefully you're ready for what the anomalies are. So again, some guy comes walking in with a giant duffel bag and a parka in July walking through the park. Well, that's odd, right? That's going to catch your attention. So you set yourself up to know what's normally going on, know where the exits are, know who's around you, counting on your sort of early warning system to pick up on the anomaly. And then ultimately you train in a counter-ambush methodology. You don't pretend that sort of situation where this is a safety blanket and you're never going to be caught off guard. You train for being caught off guard. And then if you see it coming, it's a bonus. But you train for being caught off guard and then quickly moving through the reactive phase into the response phase, and you do what you need to do. You run, you hide, you fight, you evade, you barricade, you respond as appropriate. You do what you need to do.
Yeah. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Do you have any other closing thoughts on active shooter response and addressing what happened in Orlando, and anything that we may have not touched base on tonight? I know it was not a lot of questions, but it was a lot of combined questions from our PDN viewers. So was there anything that we did not touch base on?
You know, I think a lot of people have the same questions. I think a lot of people, whether they're gun people and they have the question about, well, what if I don't have my gun, or they're new to self-defense and they think, wow, this is overwhelming, or they have never even thought about this stuff, but they're willing to just kind of peek in at this video, or maybe somebody's going to share this video with them and they're going to have any idea what we're talking about. A lot of that boils down to the questions we've talked about. Everything from Mike's talk about mindset and is this even something do I make myself worse off by thinking about it? No, you don't. Think about it. You're going to be more comfortable if it ever happens. You're going to be more prepared. You're going to be a more confident person. What about the gun? Is the gun necessary? Nope. You're better off if you have the gun and the training. Yeah. How do I employ the gun? Do I just pull the gun out and start waving it around and hope I find the bad guy? No. You keep it controlled, close to your body or even in the holster until you see a shooting solution. What if there's other people with guns that are good guys? What do I do? Well, you're going to have to figure that out in the moment. You're going to have to coordinate with them. If they're not people you know, you're probably going to want to be able to respond also and take care of yourself. If they're people you know and trust and you don't have an immediate solution that seems better than they do for dealing with that threat, maybe you are going to look for another threat. So a lot of the stuff we've talked about, what are the improvised tools, you can learn a lot more about this at personaldefensenetwork.com. Just put in spree killer, active shooter, put in my name, put in school attacker response course. Go to that search box and look for the information in the areas you're most curious about. And if not, there's a great blog article that we put out, unfortunately in response to another spree killing that happened at a college campus in Oregon, I don't know, a year and a half ago now. Yeah. We put that article out as a list of resources, and it was list of resources for people new to this, a list of resources for people who carry guns, a list of resources for people who don't carry guns, a list of resources to share with, like family members that you're concerned about that don't even think about personal defense. So we've got a ton of information out there. We've got full DVDs on active shooter response and the school attacker response course. The main difference between those two, by the way, school attacker response course doesn't involve a firearm response, just because for 99.99% of the school systems in our country, it's just not tenable. So that's the difference. If you go to active shooter response, and we're doing our first active shooter response instructor development course in September. We actually announced that in April. I'm one of the co-owners at Endeavor Defense and Fitness CrossFit Gym in Hilliard, Ohio. Aaron Giannetti, Rob McKeeman, John Grabo, a lot of the guys there have been working with Ryan Hoover to push the SARC program to the next level as an active shooter response course. And we're now going to be doing instructor development for that as a team. The first one is in Hilliard, Ohio in September. And a lot of this information in the active shooter response course does include what to do if you're armed, as well as what to do if you don't have that firearm. So, keep that in mind as well if you're interested in sharing this stuff with others. We're trying to make those resources available.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We got a lot of live questions in. Rob, will you be staying on afterwards to answer unanswered questions?
I'm actually going to go grab some dinner with the students. I probably won't get to too many of them right away, but later tonight, tomorrow, over the next couple of days, we'll answer some of those questions for sure and make sure that people get the information they need. Again, the best thing to do if you ask a question and didn't get answered tonight, hit that search engine, hit that search, whether it's a big search engine or just go to the search bar at personaldefensenetwork.com and take a look. The answer is probably out there, but I'll try to put some of those links and some of those more specific answers in the chat area as quickly as I can.
Fantastic. And if people want to take one of your classes or keep up with what you're doing on the tour, where can they find you?
training tab at personaleventsnetwork.com. We have another month of classes. For me, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, but for the team, we're all over the country. And once the training tour winds down at the end of July, icetraining.us, there's a calendar, combatfocusshooting.com. You can go see all of the combat focus shooting instructor courses that are offered all over the country. And obviously, all the other guys, Chris Fry, Mike Seeklander, Caleb Causey, if you go check out what they're follow the links, any of their links on the Personal Defense Network training tour calendar, and you're probably going to get a link over to their websites. You're going to find them, and you're going to see that they have a calendar that exists year-round as well. So take advantage of the opportunity to train with any of those guys, and obviously get all the information you can on the internet as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rob, so much, and special thanks to Mike for jumping on for a couple minutes. We'll be talking to him more next month on next month's PDN Live. So thank you so much, Rob, and everyone have a great night.